So, Lord of the Balrogs. I remember the first time that I ever saw the Balrog, all the way back in, 2001, when the Fellowship of the Ring came out. Oh, man. I felt feelings that I can't even describe. Little 8-year-old me, just absolutely blown away. It was just one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen in my life. And I would love to see more stuff with Balrogs in it. So yeah, this channel's Nerd of the Rings. I love this channel. I listen to them all the time while I'm working on stuff. So this video just came out a few days ago, and I wanted to watch it with you guys. Oh my god, yeah, no, the Lord of the Rings movies absolutely still hold up. I watch them every single November. The extended editions. They just hold a very special place in my heart, to say the least. Alright, tell me if it's like too loud or something. Why November? I don't know, it just kind of became the time of year that I watched them. I fucking hate fall for the most part because, like, you know, sun's going down early, it's getting cold, everything's dying. I feel like shit, so I mean, it kind of helps, I guess. Gives me some excitement, something to be happy about. It's probably part of why. But either way, let's learn about Gothmog.
He is among the greatest Maiar to serve the Dark Lord Morgoth. Taking on a dreadful hue in his servitude, he would be the lord of his kind, and would personally kill 2 High Kings of the Noldor. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the life of Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs.
Well, Balrog is like their species.
Like all Balrogs, Gothmog was originally one of the great Ainur, created by Eru Ilúvatar. It is likely that he, along with all future Balrogs, joined Melkor as he sowed his discord within the music that created the world itself. Tolkien describes the Maiar like Gothmog, who fell into the service of the Dark Lord in the Silmarillion. Of the Maiar, many were drawn to Melkor's splendor in the days of his greatness, and remained in that allegiance down into his darkness, and others he corrupted afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valaraukar, the scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror. In the early days of Arda, these Maiar took on a form of shadow and flame, and after Melkor destroys the 2 lamps, the first source of light for the world, they gather with Melkor in his first fortress of Utumno.
Pretty rude.
During the ensuing Battle of the Powers between Melkor and the Valar, Utumno is destroyed, and Melkor captured. The Balrogs, along with Sauron, would hide in the pits of Melkor's secondary fortress of Angband in the Year of the Trees 1099. There, Gothmog and his Balrogs would await the return of their master for nearly 4,000 years. When Morgoth returns to Middle-earth in the Year of the Trees 1495, the great spider-like creature Ungoliant is ready to destroy Morgoth for withholding the Silmarils from her insatiable appetite.
Probably
Morgoth's
from Lord of the
cry
Rings.
is heard by his Balrogs, who are still hiding in Angband, and they travel to his aid in Lamoth like a tempest of fire. Here we see the Balrogs wield one of their iconic weapons, whips of flame, which they use to destroy Ungoliant's webs and cause her to flee. While the Balrogs are well known to have been Maiar, the same category of being as the wizards, it's interesting to note that Tolkien at one time imagined their origin quite differently. In some of his earliest writings of Middle-earth, collected in the Book of Lost Tales, Gothmog himself is referred to as a son of Melko, the original name of Melkor.
Oh.
It was only later that Tolkien discarded the idea that the Valar would have children, and instead made the Balrogs fallen Maiar. Returning to the story, at this point, nearing the dawn of the First Age, it's entirely possible and even likely that the elves knew nothing of the Balrogs of Morgoth.
That's a big freaking shame. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure the boxer dude got it from Tolkien's works, because he was most definitely around well before Street Fighter. I need to reread these books. I actually have I don't have all the books. I have the Silmarillion and I have Unfinished Tales, but I need to actually convince myself to start reading again before I buy more books, because like if I just buy a bunch of books, they're just gonna sit there. I have a bunch of books that I have to read. They're in boxes from the move. Thine is supposed to be used before a word that begins with a vowel. I don't think so. I don't believe so. I think thine is just a fancy way of saying my. So. Oh no, wait, no. Throw down thine hands. Not my, it's your. Like. So it wouldn't have to go before a vowel, as far as I know. Yeah. Yeah, not mine. Yours. Yeah.
Indeed, they knew very little of the Battle of the Powers that occurred in the spring of their existence, and had no direct contact with the demons themselves. Their first would come in the Dagor Nuin Gileath, when Feanor's followers arrive in Middle-earth. Arriving via the stolen Teleri ships in the year of the trees 1497, they make their way up the Firth of Drengist. They pass into the lands of Hithlum, and make camp on the northern shore of Lake Mithrim. There, the elves are attacked. Orcs of Morgoth greatly outnumber the elves, but the Noldor, who are still empowered by the light of Valinor, defeat their foes. In the aftermath of this battle, Feanor in his wrath pursues a small group of surviving orcs across the plains of Ardgallen toward Angband. In this moment, with his enemy upon his doorstep, Morgoth sends out his Balrogs. These demons come forth out of Thangorodrim. Their hearts were of fire, but they were cloaked in darkness, and terror went before them.
We really need a show or a movie based on the War of the Balrogs, too. Not enough Balrog in the world. They really are one of my favorite beings from the whole Legendarium.
There, upon the confines of Dor Daedaloth, the land of Morgoth, Feanor was surrounded, with few friends about him. Long he fought on, and undismayed, though he was wrapped in fire and wounded with many wounds. But at the last he was smitten to the ground by Gothmog, Lord of Balrogs.
So here's the thing, I'm probably one of the only people that didn't hate Rings of Power. I just look at it as a fan fiction. I don't care. I will take as much Lord of the Rings related content as I possibly can. If I can get more Tolkien content, I'm cool with it. Like, I still rewatch The Hobbit from time to time. It's not my favorite, but I'll still consume the fuck out of it. I'm part of the problem. I would love, absolutely love, to get something based off of the War of the Balrogs, and I'm pretty sure that there are movies in the works. I don't know if it's by Amazon. I think is it by someone else? Let me see here. Well, as far as I recall, they didn't get the rights to use everything from the Tolkien. Don't fucking say Netflix unless you know it's Netflix. You know how I feel about Netflix, and I feel like shit today. Okay. Tolkien movies in the works. The Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim, an anime film, is due in theaters April 12th, 2024. It is set 183 years before the events of Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings trilogy and tells the story of Helm Hammerhead, the King of Rohan. Beyond that, there's no more film dates announced. Okay, but who's making it, though? Who is making it? Amazon has the TV series rights, but I don't believe that they have movie rights. That's the thing. It's Warner Bros. Okay, so Warner Bros. Is making movies. So, not Netflix. Cinema is heading back to Middle-earth with Warner Bros. And New Line signing a deal to make more adaptations of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Warner Bros. Discovery's chief executive David Zaslav announced on Thursday on an earnings call that a deal had been brokered to make multiple films based on Tolkien's books. The cost of the deal with Embracer Group, the Swedish gaming company that owns the rights to most of Tolkien's world, has yet to be revealed. The films will be developed through the Warner Bros. Production company New Line Cinema, which produced the trilogy made by the director Peter Jackson between 2001 and 2003. Those films grossed almost $3 billion around the world, with the third installment, The Return of the King, winning 11 Oscars, including Best Picture at the Academy Awards, as it deserves. In a joint statement to Variety, Jackson and his two closest Lord of the Rings collaborators, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, said Warner Bros. And Embracer have kept us in the loop every step of the way about the new films. We look forward to speaking with them further to hear their vision for the franchise moving forward, Jackson, Walsh, and Boyens said. Embracer acquired the rights to Lord of the Rings films, games, merchandise, theme parks, and live productions when it bought Middle-earth Enterprises in 2022. Following our recent acquisition of Middle-earth Enterprises, we're thrilled to embark on this new collaborative journey with New Line Cinema and Warner Bros. Pictures, bringing the incomparable world of J.R.R. Tolkien back to the big screen in new and exciting ways, says Lee Guinchard, the chief executive of Embracer Free Mode. We understand how cherished these works are, and working together with our partners at New Line Cinema and Warner Bros. Pictures, we plan to honor the past, look to the future, and adhere to the strongest level of quality and production values. That's... ooh. It's not shade at all. The new heads of the Warner Bros. Film division, Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi, who oversee Warner Films and New Line, are behind the new multi-year deal that will mean the studio can develop future films based on both Tolkien's Lord of the Rings books and The Hobbit. DeLuca and Abdi say New Line took an unprecedented leap of faith on Tolkien's world 2 decades ago, but signal that any new films would not necessarily revisit what Jackson's films had covered, saying, "For all the scope and detail lovingly packed into the two trilogies, the vast, complex, and dazzling universe dreamed up by J.R.R. Tolkien remains largely unexplored." Zaslav, who has overseen major cuts at Warner Bros. Discovery after the media conglomerate formed from a merger between Warner Media and Discovery Inc. last year, had talked about the need for more film franchises to make profits. The media conglomerate disclosed a $2.1 billion loss on Thursday, mostly attributed to write-downs and cuts from the merger. New Line and Warner Bros. Animation are working on The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, an animated film set 183 years before the events of The Lord of the Rings. The movie, which expands on the story of Helm Hammerhead, a legendary leader of the Kingdom of Rohan, and is slated to be released in cinemas April 2024. Amazon continues to own the TV rights to The Lord of the Rings. The tech giant's first show, Lord of the Rings Ring of Power, cost them more than $450 million to make. Jesus Christ. Yeah, when everybody complains, like, oh, it was $1 billion, a lot of that was purchasing the rights to be able to use it as a show. Like, a lot of it was just purchasing the rights to it. It's fucking expensive. Yeah, they're very different companies now. I don't mind Rings of Power on its own so far, just imagining the series is kind of a poor fan fiction, but when it's so hard for me to ignore what their intentions were, how they marketed themselves, how they insulted the entire core Tolkien fan base, a bunch of gatekeeping basement-dwelling racists for being fans. Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally understand all of that, Vel. but I'm still gonna watch it, and I'm not gonna care as much. I don't like to look too deeply into shit, generally, because it doesn't have a whole lot to do with me, it doesn't really spoil my enjoyment of things. You know? Like, I just want to sit down and watch some fantasy or some sci-fi and eat some popcorn and hang out in my dimly lit room, just injecting new fantasy into my veins, you know? I don't mind that. Yeah, a Middle-earth themed park would be interesting. It would have to be in New Zealand, yeah. We can build it here. Yeah. As long as they never, ever, ever remake the original. Oh, yeah, no, if they can't remake it. No. I would still watch it if they remade it, but I would probably not be happy with it. I don't... Fuck Disneyland. Mind you, I haven't been there in a long time. I would if they made a remake, I would watch it, and then I would make a video talking about it. Well, yeah, but it wasn't a remake of a live action, Sean. It was a remake of several failed animated movies and an imagining of a book series. Like, the animated Lord of the Rings did not do well. It's a very cult following. It has a cult following. We'll leave it at that.
There, Feanor would have perished, had not his sons in that moment come up with force to his aid, and the Balrogs left him and departed to Angband. Feanor is mortally wounded, and with his death, Gothmog kills his first High King of the Elves. The Balrogs would next be seen in the Dagor Bragollach in 455 of the First Age.
Oh, I loved the animated ones too, but again, it's still a cult classic, you know, like, the vast majority of people that watched it didn't like it. Nowadays, a lot of people like it, but it's still very niche, you know?
After a period of 400 years, when the elves lay siege to Angband, Morgoth breaks the siege, sending out rivers of flame as the Iron Mountain spewed fire and fumes. Gothmog and his Balrogs are once again unleashed, alongside multitudes of orcs and a fully grown Glaurung, first of the dragons.
Yeah,
it is a decisive victory for Morgoth's forces, as many elves are slaughtered in the chaos. Seeing what he believed to be the beginning of the downfall of his people, the High King Fingolfin challenges Morgoth to single combat. While Morgoth would kill Fingolfin in the duel, he would be injured in the foot by the blade of the mighty Elf Lord. From this moment onward, we would see Morgoth stay within his stronghold, and instead send his Balrogs, orcs, and dragons to fight his battles.
And werewolves
the next such battle would be the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, where a great alliance of elves, men, and dwarves seeks to make a final war upon Morgoth. In this battle, Gothmog is referred to as the High Captain of Angband, solidifying his position as one of Morgoth's most important servants. As mentioned earlier, Sauron is also under Morgoth's servitude at this time, but it is Gothmog who leads his armies in war. It seems that Sauron, like his master, takes on commanding roles that don't involve direct combat. Instead, his deeds of the First Age are often using his trickery and sorcery. As for Gothmog and the Nirnaeth, he would come face to face with yet another High King as the battle rages on. But now in the Western battle, Fingon and Turgon were assailed by a tide of foes, thrice greater than all the force that was left to them. Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs, High Captain of Angband, was come, and he drove a dark wedge between the elven hosts, surrounding King Fingon, and thrusting Turgon and Húrin aside towards the fen of Serek. Then he turned upon Fingon.
No, Sauron worked under Morgoth for a very long time and only became the big boss after he got all fucked up. Like, even so, if he came back, Sauron would serve him again. We could totally do a lore. The Lord of the Rings has a lot of lore. a lot. And I know several very good channels to go over it. Like, it has a lot of lore. Holy moly.
That was a grim meeting. At last, Fingon stood alone with his guard dead about him, and he fought with Gothmog, until another Balrog came behind and cast a throng of fire about him. Then Gothmog hewed him with his black axe, and a white flame sprang up from the helm of Fingon as it was cloven. Thus fell the High King of the Noldor, and they beat him into the dust with their maces, and his banner, blue and silver, they trod into the mire of his blood. Thus Gothmog kills his second High King of the Noldor. After this feat, we are told Gothmog captures the man Hurin alive by the order of Morgoth, though Hurin would kill 70 orcs and trolls as they attempt the capture. Eventually, Gothmog's troll guards capture Hurin. The Lord of Balrogs drags a bound Hurin back to Angband to deliver to his master. While this account shows Gothmog wielding a black axe, and we know also of their whips of flame and maces, we don't see the Lord of Balrogs wielding another of their weapons, magic. Gandalf mentions that as he was putting a shutting spell on the door to the chamber of Mazarbul, the counterspell was terrible and nearly broke him. While we don't see Gothmog or other First Age Balrogs wield such magic themselves, there is no doubt it was within their power. Now perhaps I'll make a future video on the powers of Balrogs or Maiar in general, but for now let's conclude the story of the Lord of their kind. Gothmog would make one final appearance in the Wars of Beleriand. After the location of Gondolin is betrayed to Morgoth, he once again sends Gothmog to lead his army. This force, comprised of orcs, balrogs, and dragons, would come to the hidden city in 510 of the First Age. Also within the Book of Lost Tales, we find an account of Gothmog leading his force to the northern gate of Gondolin and ordering them to pile their siege equipment against it. The gate breaks from the weight of this mass of iron, and the city is breached. Gothmog's army would bring fire and destruction to the great elven kingdom. While not at Gothmog's own hand, the High King Turgon would die in this battle. As for Gothmog himself, he would come face to face with the elf lord Ecthelion. While the result of the story remains the same in later writings, the most complete account of the battle comes also from the Book of Lost Tales. Tuor stood then in the way of that beast, but was sundered from Elgamoth, and they pressed him backward even to the center of the square nigh the fountain. There he became weary from the strangling heat, and was beaten down by a great demon, even Gothmog, Lord of Balrogs, son of Melko. But lo, Ecthelion, whose face was of the pallor of gray steel, and whose shield arm hung limp at his side, strove above him as he fell, and that gnome drove at the demon, yet did not give him his death, getting rather a wound to his sword arm that his weapon left his grasp. Then leapt Ecthelion, Lord of the Fountain, fairest of the Noldoli, full at Gothmog even as he raised his whip, and his helm that had a spike upon it he drove into that evil breast. And he twined his legs about the foeman's thighs, and the Balrog yelled and fell forward. But those two dropped into the basin of the king's fountain, which was very deep. There found that creature his bane, and Ecthelion sank steel-laden into the depths. And so perished the Lord of the Fountain after fiery battle in cool waters. Thus ends Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs.
Sucks.
With him would perish one other Balrog in the fall of Gondolin, this one at the hands of Glorfindel. With 2 Balrogs killed, it likely leaves at most 5 Balrogs in the service of Morgoth.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that by the Third Age there are only 3 Balrogs left, and one of them is Durin's Bane. And I don't think that they go into any, like, much more information about the other 2 Balrogs that are only speculated to be alive.
For the War of Wrath. While Tolkien originally envisioned armies of Balrogs, he later said that 3, or at most 7, ever existed. We know for certain only one Balrog to survive the climactic battle of the First Age,
no, I thought it was
the
3.
one that would hide in the depths of the Misty Mountains and come to be known as Durin's Bane. While Gothmog, greatest of Balrogs, would perish in the pools of Gondolin, his name would appear once more in Tolkien's works. In the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, in The Return of the King, we find the second in command behind the Witch King is one named Gothmog. In Peter Jackson's films, this character was depicted as an orc chieftain. However, it's never explicitly stated what kind of being this Gothmog is. Many fans believe him to be an orc or an uruk, though theories abound. Some say he could be a black Númenórean like the Mouth of Sauron. An even more deep-cut theory says he was a Baldog, which is a fallen Maya that takes the form of an orc. While I personally think an orc or uruk most likely, I do find it interesting that the Third Age Gothmog could be a fallen Maya like his namesake, though he would be far lesser in power and rank. Yeah. While the Gothmog of later history would likely be wiped out with nearly all of Sauron's forces at Minas Tirith, Gothmog the Balrog would be remembered in the legendary tales of the elves. Yeah. And the appearance of Durin's Bane in The Lord of the Rings would give us a mere inkling of the power and ferocity of their Lord Gothmog, the greatest of their kind. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Listen Me the Cinda, Kella Brimbor, The Mighty Mim, Team Weasel, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Toby Mob's Music, CCDC Red Team, Nerd Sidgman Anytimer, Pelkey Sports Cards, Moki the Brown, Christopher Carbaugh, Joe Tepper, Sky Carcass, Slide.
Every time I hear him pronounce this Moki, oh my gosh. It's okay, Nerd of the Rings, I forgive you, but it's Mochi.
Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Salim Rahman, Zetrock, Berto Berg, Grand Strategy Nerd, Graham Darracott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Michael Wu, Grant McGregor, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description and purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.
I need to redraw the Balrog. I started a really cool Balrog drawing, and it ended up getting peed on, so that's great. I can always redo it. Pee on the Balrog. Yeah, I know, right? You put the fire out with your cat pee. I think it was Little Moon. Bingo Bob.